Who can you truly trust? How well do you really know the person sleeping next to you, sharing your life, your dreams, your secrets? These questions are more than unsettling, they are haunting. Because sometimes the answers you think you know are the very ones that shatter everything you believe. This is the story of a betrayal so profound it defies comprehension. A case that begins with a sunny Mother's Day morning and spirals into a nightmare of unanswered questions and heartbreaking revelations. In the picturesque mountains of Colorado, a place where life seems almost idyllic, a vibrant woman vanished without a trace. No warning signs, no goodbye, just silence. What should have been a day of celebration, a day for love and family, became the starting point for a mystery that would grip the nation. A mother disappeared, leaving behind a shattered family, a devastated community, and a trail of secrets no one was prepared to uncover. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident, but as the hours turned to days and the days to weeks, hope gave way to suspicion. The story took a dark turn, revealing cracks in the foundation of what many assumed was a perfect life. Beneath the surface of smiling photos and seemingly unbreakable bonds lay secrets. Secrets that would expose a betrayal so cruel it would leave even seasoned investigators reeling. What happened to her that morning? Was it a random act of violence, or something far more calculated, far more personal? The deeper you look, the darker the story becomes. The evidence tells a chilling tale, one that raises questions about love, loyalty, and the lengths someone might go to keep their own secrets hidden. Who wanted her silenced, and why? This case is not just about a disappearance. It's a story of trust twisted into betrayal, of love overshadowed by darkness, and of a community forever changed by the events of that day. Friends became suspects, family bonds were tested, and in the middle of it all was a woman who deserved so much more. A life cut tragically short, leaving behind a legacy of heartbreak and unanswered questions. The betrayal uncovered in this case will leave you questioning everything you thought you understood about human relationships. This isn't just a mystery, it's a tragedy. A chilling reminder that sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones hiding the darkest secrets. What really happened to her that fateful morning? How could something so devastating take place under the guise of normalcy? And, most haunting of all, could justice ever truly be served? This is a story that will stay with you, a story that demands answers even when they seem impossible to find. A mother, a life, a betrayal so unbelievable that it forces us to confront the depths of human deception. Prepare yourself to uncover the truth behind the headlines, the heartbreak, and the questions that refuse to fade, because this case is far from over, and every revelation will leave you more captivated than the last. Before we unravel the mystery, let's take a step back and look beyond the headlines to understand who Suzanne Morphew truly was. To the world, she was more than just another name in a tragic story. She was a force of nature, a vibrant soul who touched the lives of everyone fortunate enough to know her. Born and raised in the heart of the tight-knit community of Indiana, Suzanne was the epitome of warmth and resilience. She carried an infectious smile that could light up even the darkest room, and an unwavering optimism that seemed almost unshakable. Friends often described her as a beacon of positivity, a person who always had time to listen and a kind word to offer. Suzanne had an innate ability to make people feel seen, valued, and cared for. Whether it was through her volunteer work, her role as a mother, or simply being a friend, Suzanne had a way of leaving an indelible mark on those around her. It was this radiant personality that first drew Barry Morphew to her. The two seemed like a match made in heaven, a couple whose love story could have been plucked from the pages of a romance novel. Suzanne believed Barry was her soulmate, a man who would stand by her side through life's ups and downs. They married and built a life together, eventually settling in the breathtaking landscapes of Maysville, Colorado, where the rugged mountains seemed to echo the strength of their bond. Their two daughters were the heart of Suzanne's world. She poured every ounce of her love into raising them, creating memories filled with laughter and adventure. Family hikes through Colorado's picturesque trails, afternoons spent cheering at soccer games, and cozy evenings at home defined their life together. To an outsider, the Morphews were the quintessential all-American family, But as we've learned time and again, appearances can be deceiving. Behind the carefully curated facade of family photos and friendly smiles, life in the Morphew household wasn't as idyllic as it seemed. Subtle cracks began to form in Suzanne and Barry's marriage, cracks that would grow over time, hinting at tensions that would later become crucial in understanding the events that unfolded. Barry, a charismatic and hard-working man, was often described as a doting husband and father, but those who looked closer noticed an undercurrent of control in his demeanor, a need to dictate the terms of their life together. Suzanne, on the other hand, was fiercely independent, with dreams and aspirations that sometimes clashed with Barry's vision for their family. Friends would later recall moments when Suzanne seemed quieter than usual, as if the weight of something unspoken was bearing down on her. In hindsight, those subtle signs take on an ominous significance. Was Suzanne hiding a growing unhappiness? Were there deeper issues lurking beneath the surface, issues she felt she couldn't talk about? As we peel back the layers of this story, these questions become impossible to ignore. Suzanne's journal, discovered later during the investigation, painted a complex picture of her inner world. While outwardly she remained the warm, loving woman everyone knew, her writings hinted at a heart wrestling with doubt and frustration. She had confided in a close friend that she felt trapped, caught between the life she had built and the life she longed for. Still, Suzanne was not one to give up easily. She was determined to find a way to reconcile her struggles and preserve her family's happiness. But life, as we know, has a way of shifting unexpectedly. The spring of 2020 brought more than just the promise of blooming flowers and sunny skies to the small town of Maysville. It brought with it a storm. Suzanne's family and friends would later recount how, in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, she seemed distracted, preoccupied even. Was it merely the stress of day-to-day life? Or was Suzanne carrying the weight of something more sinister? No one could have guessed that beneath the surface, an invisible clock was ticking toward a devastating climax. The story of Suzanne Morphew isn't just about a woman lost too soon. It's a chilling reminder of how quickly life can change. One moment everything seems stable, and the next, it's as if the ground beneath you has disappeared. May 10, 2020, started like any other spring morning in Maysville, Colorado. The sun cast a golden hue over the rugged mountains, birds chirped in the crisp air, and the world seemed still. But behind the doors of the Morphew home, a storm was brewing. One that would forever alter the lives of everyone who knew Suzanne Morphew. That morning, Barry Morphew told authorities that Suzanne had gone out for a routine bike ride, something she often did to clear her mind and enjoy the tranquil beauty of her surroundings. It seemed innocent enough, a woman embracing the outdoors on Mother's Day, but Suzanne never returned. Hours passed, and an unsettling silence filled the air. When Barry called the police, his voice carried a note of urgency that hinted at the gravity of the situation. Authorities acted quickly, and soon the search was underway. Suzanne's bike was discovered near a remote trail, leaning awkwardly against the terrain. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like a simple accident, but to seasoned investigators, something was off. The position of the bike, the lack of significant damage, it didn't add up. Suzanne, an experienced cyclist, would have known how to navigate the familiar trails. So why had her ride ended here, in this eerie and isolated spot? The discovery of the bike set off alarm bells. Search teams mobilized with a speed and precision that reflected the urgency of the situation. Volunteers from the community, friends, and even strangers gathered to scour the dense woods and rocky trails. Drones buzzed overhead, while helicopters circled above, scanning the area for any sign of Suzanne. The air was thick with tension, a silent acknowledgement that time was slipping away. Barry appeared distraught, pleading with the public for information and offering a substantial reward for Suzanne's safe return. In interviews, he described her as his angel, the love of his life. But as the days dragged on, whispers began to circulate. People questioned the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Why had she been out cycling alone on Mother's Day? Why had no one seen her on the trails? And why was Barry's demeanor, at times, oddly detached? As days turned into weeks, the hope of finding Suzanne alive began to dwindle. the media descended on the small town, amplifying the story and turning the Morphew family into a household name. Reporters dug into every detail, asking the questions that many were too polite or too afraid to voice. The investigation, however, was just beginning to scratch the surface. Evidence collected at the scene hinted at something far more sinister than a tragic accident. Suzanne's helmet was found later, discarded miles away from the bike, raising even more questions. It felt less like a breadcrumb trail leading to answers and more like a puzzle designed to mislead. Suspicion started to grow, not just among the public, but within law enforcement. The seemingly perfect life of the Morphews was beginning to unravel, revealing fractures that had long been hidden. What started as a desperate search for a missing mother was quickly becoming a story of secrets, lies, and a betrayal so profound it would leave everyone reeling. The clock was ticking, and with each passing day, the weight of Suzanne's absence grew heavier. But the most chilling realization was that the truth, whatever it was, might not lie buried in the woods, but within the walls of the very home she had shared with her family. Barry Morphew, the grieving husband, had initially seemed desperate to find his wife. His public pleas and offers of a reward painted him as a heartbroken man willing to do anything to bring Suzanne home. But as investigators dug deeper, a different narrative began to emerge. Financial records revealed transactions that didn't make sense, including large sums of money that appeared to vanish without explanation. Phone records painted a troubling picture, hinting at strained communication between the couple in the weeks leading up to Suzanne's disappearance. Then there was the revelation that hit the hardest. Suzanne had confided in close friends about her unhappiness. Her marriage to Barry, which appeared unshakable on the outside, was reportedly filled with tension and distrust. Allegations of infidelity surfaced, adding fuel to an already growing fire. Investigators uncovered messages between Suzanne and another man, suggesting she had been considering leaving Barry. These discoveries cast a shadow over the man who had once called Suzanne his angel. Barry's behavior also began to draw more suspicion. In interviews, he seemed composed, almost too composed for someone in his situation. His words were careful, deliberate, as if he was more concerned about saying the right thing than showing genuine emotion. To some, it came across as the demeanor of a man hiding something. To others, it was the coping mechanism of someone overwhelmed by grief. The cracks in Barry's story grew larger when he spoke with investigators. His timeline of events didn't always line up. Witnesses recalled seeing him on the day Suzanne disappeared, but his whereabouts during critical hours remained unclear. There were also strange details about the condition of their home. Investigators noted items that seemed out of place, as if someone had hastily tried to clean up but had overlooked small clues. Meanwhile, Suzanne's loved ones, including her daughters, were caught in an emotional tug-of-war. They wanted to believe in their father's innocence, but the growing mountain of questions made that belief harder to hold on to. The family dynamic was fracturing under the weight of the investigation, with the once close knit Morphew household now divided by doubt and despair. And yet, amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. The answers to what had happened to Suzanne lay somewhere in the tension-filled history of her marriage. Investigators knew they had to tread carefully. Every clue, every inconsistency, every whispered secret brought them closer to uncovering the truth. What had started as a search for a missing woman was now peeling back the layers of a life that, behind closed doors, was far from perfect. The investigation was closing in, but the deeper they dug, the more haunting the picture became. The question wasn't just where Suzanne was, but who had truly been there for her in the moments when she needed someone the most. With suspicions mounting and Barry under increasing scrutiny, the case was poised to take an even darker turn. Secrets don't stay buried forever, and the truth about Suzanne's disappearance was beginning to cast its long, shadowy outline. The next move in this chilling game of revelations was one that would leave everyone stunned. A year had passed since Suzanne Morphew's disappearance, and the sense of urgency that had once galvanized the small town of Maysville had given way to an eerie quiet. The case that had once dominated headlines seemed to be slipping into obscurity, another unsolved mystery that would haunt those who cared but fade for everyone else. On May 5, 2021, the silence was shattered. Barry Morphew was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and attempting to influence a public official. The news sent shockwaves through the community and beyond, reigniting public interest and sparking heated debates. Barry, the grieving husband who had pleaded for Suzanne's safe return, was now the prime suspect in her murder. For prosecutors, the arrest marked the culmination of a year-long investigation. The evidence they presented painted a damning picture of Barry's actions in the days leading up to Suzanne's disappearance. GPS data from Barry's truck revealed unexplained movements, late-night trips to remote areas, stops that seemed deliberate yet unaccounted for. Further scrutiny revealed phone activity that conflicted with Barry's alibi, but perhaps most chilling was Suzanne's own messages to a close friend, unearthed during the investigation, in which she described feeling trapped and scared in her marriage. The discovery of Suzanne's DNA on an item in Barry's possession only deepened the intrigue. What initially seemed like a small detail became a cornerstone of the prosecution's narrative. They alleged that Barry, consumed by jealousy and fear of losing Suzanne, had acted out of desperation. Friends of Suzanne corroborated this theory, recounting conversations where she had expressed a desire to leave Barry, a revelation that, if true, cast his public grief in a sinister light. But Barry's defense team was quick to strike back. They argued that the prosecution's case was built on circumstantial evidence, nothing concrete enough to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. His defense painted a picture of a man unfairly targeted by a system eager for answers. Barry himself maintained his innocence, appearing stoic yet defiant in court. "I love my wife," he told reporters. "I would never hurt her." As the trial loomed, the community found itself bitterly divided. Neighbors who once spoke warmly of Barry began to take sides. Some believed he was a victim of a botched investigation, while others whispered about his strange behavior in the weeks after Suzanne vanished. Why, they asked, had he sold the family home so quickly? Why had he been seen disposing of items in various dumpsters? And why did he seem so calm, even when faced with the most damning accusations? Then, in April 2022, just weeks before the trial was set to begin, the case took an unexpected and dramatic turn. Prosecutors announced they were dropping all charges against Barry Morphew. The decision came after a series of setbacks, including the inability to test key pieces of evidence due to snow-covered conditions at a critical search site. Without a body, a weapon, or definitive proof, they admitted they could not meet the burden of proof required for a conviction. The announcement was met with shock and outrage. For Suzanne's family, it was a devastating blow. They had pinned their hopes on the trial, believing it would finally bring answers and closure. Instead, they were left with more questions than ever. Was Barry truly innocent, or had the system failed to hold him accountable? And if he wasn't guilty, then who was? Barry, for his part, maintained his composure as he left the courthouse, flanked by his defense team. His expression was unreadable, a mix of relief and something harder to place. In the court of public opinion, his reputation had been irreparably damaged, but legally, he was a free man. "This has been the most horrific year of my life," he said in a brief statement, "but I never lost faith in the truth." Still, the investigation was far from over. Law enforcement vowed to continue searching for answers, emphasizing that the case remained open. Suzanne's loved ones held on to the hope that one day they would learn the truth about what had happened to her. But for now, the shadow of her disappearance hung heavy over Maysville, a haunting reminder of how quickly a picture-perfect life could unravel. Even as the case seemed to reach a standstill, whispers of new leads began to circulate. Unanswered questions lingered. What had been found at the remote search site that was left unexplored due to the snow? Was there someone else, unseen and unsuspected, who held the key to Suzanne's fate? And, most chillingly, if Barry wasn't responsible, then who was? The truth remained elusive, buried beneath layers of deception and unanswered questions. But one thing was certain: the story of Suzanne Morphew was far from over. Then, in a stunning turn of events in September 2023, a discovery was made that would shake the foundations of Suzanne's case. After years of relentless searching, Suzanne's remains were found in a remote, rugged area of Colorado, far from the home she had once shared with her family. The announcement sent shockwaves through the community, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal and igniting a media frenzy. For those who had loved Suzanne, the discovery was bittersweet, a heartbreaking confirmation of her fate, but also a step toward the closure they so desperately needed. The location itself was haunting. Investigators described the area as desolate and isolated, a place where no one would stumble upon her by accident. It raised unsettling questions. How had she ended up there? Who had left her in such a forsaken spot? And why? While the discovery answered the agonizing question of where Suzanne had been, it brought a cascade of new questions that deepened the mystery surrounding her death. An autopsy would later confirm the grim reality. Suzanne's death was indeed a homicide. But even in this, the answers remained frustratingly out of reach. The exact cause of her death could not be determined, leaving investigators with only fragments of evidence and a nagging sense that someone, somewhere, still held the truth. The absence of clarity around her final moments weighed heavily on everyone who had followed her story, especially her daughters, who were now left to grapple with the loss of their mother in the most unimaginable way. Suzanne's family and friends gathered to honor her memory, their grief tinged with a renewed determination to find justice. Candlelight vigils were held, with her daughters speaking out about the profound impact their mother had on their lives and the devastating void her absence had left. In a powerful moment, one of Suzanne's closest friends told reporters, "We prayed for answers, and now we have some. But what we need now is justice. Suzanne deserves that much." Meanwhile, law enforcement officials assured the public that the case was anything but closed. Investigators combed through the evidence collected at the site, hoping to uncover new leads. Experts speculated that the discovery of Suzanne's remains could breathe new life into the stalled case, possibly uncovering forensic clues that had been previously overlooked. And yet, the road ahead seemed fraught with uncertainty. For Barry Morphew, the discovery of Suzanne's remains brought renewed scrutiny. His previous arrest and the subsequent dropping of charges became the subject of intense debate. Some questioned whether authorities had acted prematurely in their case against him, while others speculated that the discovery of her remains could reignite efforts to link him to the crime. Barry's public statements, sparse and carefully controlled, did little to sway public opinion. To some, he remained a grieving husband. To others, a man who had evaded justice. But even as the spotlight returned to Barry, whispers of alternative theories grew louder. Could someone else have been responsible for Suzanne's tragic end? If so, had that person been hiding in plain sight all along? The uncertainty kept the case alive in the public imagination, fueling speculation and debate that showed no signs of fading. The discovery of Suzanne's remains marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. It was a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the cruel reality of unanswered questions. But for those who loved her, it was also a call to action. They vowed to keep her memory alive, to fight for the truth, and to ensure that Suzanne's story would not fade into obscurity. If this case has taught us anything, it's that the pursuit of justice is not a straight path. It's winding, unpredictable, and often heartbreakingly slow, but it's a path that must be walked. Suzanne's story is not just about tragedy, it's about resilience, love, and the unyielding determination to seek the truth. Now, we turn the question to you. What do you think about this case? Do you believe justice will ever be served for Suzanne? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe no one should ever have to endure what Suzanne and her family went through, subscribe to the channel. Only those who think such tragedies are acceptable would pass on the chance to join us in demanding justice. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and take care.